right, another AI drive and talk with Jarvie. I do these often, I feel like, and sometimes I forget to upload them, or I'm not motivated to upload them. Sorry. I should, and I'm going to do it for this one. In fact, I think this is going to be 2 videos, because I often talk about news and what's the newest tools and how I can see them helping different people. And I want to do that because there's some new fun things. However, this one I want to talk more about the mindset. And I feel like most all of the people I know and friends, they haven't found a way of how they're going to integrate the AI benefits into their life. They haven't thought it through, tried it out, tested what they want. They've dabbled. Often people dabble and they're like, okay, well, I don't know. That didn't seem to benefit me a ton, that it impacted me a ton. And I think a lot of it comes from they've got a certain way they interact with online things. I've got a question, I Google it, I get the answer, I leave. That is the interaction style of the recent past. And so they're like, I understand this style, let me apply this to AI, because it seems to have a lot of answers. Let me put that in, get an answer, leave as soon as possible. I envision a lot of very short conversations with AI that are almost as if you were doing this on Google, and Google now integrating AI things into it. Basically, it's well, I just Google it and I'll just look at the AI response and, what's the big deal? What's the big deal with AI? Because I don't notice a big change in things. In Google's AI is that kind of experience that is similar to the old experience. Not a huge difference, and so that relationship, and if we've had this I don't do I need this information that badly, and to go over there and ask these questions, and it's what if I make this assumption, then I don't have to ask, and is it really that important? And we're making these judgments in our mind of what's the cost benefit. Sorry, just getting a phone call. What's the cost benefit ratio on this all? And yeah, so, but it's not really the experience that there's so much of a heightened experience, and I don't see hardly any people yet, and I know that this takes time and this kind of change of the way that we're thinking. And so I just try to be this kind of push and poke and say, have you thought about doing this way? And okay, so why am I recording this video? Because I just had an experience with a friend, and they were telling about this tough thing at work with real estate related, and there's well, it's a very unique situation, and I've got this this financing aspect of it, and this other person that I'm interacting with, and the sellers and buyers and financing and these contracts, and they're giving a bunch of these details. Okay, so yeah, they're giving out all these details of the situation, and they're I don't know exactly what to do. And I thought, okay, this is where AI really excels, and this is how it's very different from the mindset of Google a question, get an answer, and then you still have to figure out what it means, how it applies, where it fits in, and all these different things. And so in my mind, I'm like, man, everything you just shared in this conversation, your ability to communicate with me what is going on, and importantly, where it is that you're feeling like you need some assistance to help think about this thing a little bit differently. I don't know how to think about this, and I'm like, that is your ability to communicate. That is exactly kind of where AI can kind of like jump in and be of an assistance, and that is not a normal sort of thing. You know, maybe are used to having a discussion with someone else that has been in your shoes, and you're like, well, I don't know who, and are they going to take a couple hours out of their life to kind of walk me through this all, which is great. That is fine. Do we always have that? No. So I'm like, man, if we could just transcribed this phone call and put it into AI, it's not going to give you all the answers like right away. It's not the Google, like, ask a question, get the perfect answer. It's like, but it's going to understand your situation, understand the data. And one thing I said, and this helped kind of click things a little bit better, it's like, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. You don't know the questions even to ask. And you can actually just say, once it's got some of these insights, like, hey, ask me 5 questions that will better help you understand the situation. And so it's like, oh, can you, like, here's question 1, 2, 3, and you're like, oh, okay. Like, even judging by the questions, it's like, I think they're getting my situation. And oftentimes you're like, all right, I think you're on the right track and you're getting it. And if you're in this stuck state, it's like, help me think about it in a couple of different ways. And okay, I resonate with this. Like, there's so much that is still coming from you. It's not, it's almost as if the Google question answer was a very lazy sort of experience that we had for a decade plus, where we just were like, we weren't putting as much of ourself and our creativity and our curiosity on the line. There was very little creativity, very little curiosity, and almost as if AI is, we look at it, or I know a lot of people are like, that's going to create a lot of lazy people. And I'm like, no, you're thinking like the past decade of like people that just went to Google, and I don't know. I didn't use Google that much, and obviously you can see that I don't have the highest respect for it. And I do. There is some there, but I don't know. Some of this may just be hyperbolic, but I just feel like the really good interaction and kind of almost relationship with AI is so empowering. It just expands your mind and your curiosity and your creativity when done right. And so if you're like, no, I don't see that, it's because you gotta, like, there is a way in which that happens, and there is a way in which that doesn't. I have talked to people, especially some kids, but they haven't like figured out that way that they can interact with it that really empowers them, and they're just literally like using it as a cheat sheet, like answers at the back of the book, like, I've got this question I have to answer, what's the answer? And it's just like, yeah, I mean, you can do that, but that's not the empowering thing that brings curiosity and creativity and helps you. Like, my suggestion is ask so many questions that you don't need the answer to. And that's helpful, because then it puts you in that mindset of like, this is a curiosity enabler that helps me like wonder about the world and think deeper about things. it for things you don't need, that's freeing. Because when you're like, I need this and I need it to be this way, that's not how you get good at it, is what I would say. There's some things that are, and you know what, like, it is actually, I take it back to an extent. Yes, it does help, because that like sense of like, I need, pushes you a little bit, so it can be helpful. But it's very freeing when you don't need the answer to a certain thing, when it's not that important, when someone, like yesterday, I'm talking to family, and hit the links was a phrase, and she's like, why do they call it hit the links? What does that relate to? And we're like, well, it's golf, obviously. Me and my brother knew that. And they're like, but why? And I was like, I don't need to know this answer, but let's figure it out. I'm like, why do they call it hit the links? Oh, because this is some old English term, and it refers to this sandy coastal aspect, like it originated, like, because golf originated. I'm not doing the perfect justice to this whole idea of where links came from, but in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's where it came from. These old coastal golf courses, and the links style. So there's still, to this day, there's links style golf courses, even inland ones that are kind of like developed to be like a links style, like, and then we just use this term in general, like, I'm gonna hit the links, like, oh, okay, that's where kind of all language aspect, and I didn't need to know this, but it like just expands my understanding of this, and I was like, man, I feel educated on something that wasn't important. Now imagine when I need to know something, like that skill is going to be there. And I told this friend today with their real estate thing, look, go give it a shot for this particular thing that you need, and it's hard, but I don't expect it to work out perfectly for you. Like, it's going to be hard. You're not used to communicating in this style on the computer, and having like this partner in crime here, this partner that's going to like help you go back and forth, not answer every question for you, but like be this thing that's like can enhance your way of thinking through this. And this isn't a thing you've done before. It may not be normal. You give it a shot, but you may have to go back to your old ways of solving things, and maybe find someone that you can hire to assist you in this particular conundrum you have, this problem to solve. And if that's the way you've done it in the past, you may have to default to it, but give it a shot. What I would say is you need to have done this dozens of times and interacted this back and forth and like sort of stuff dozens of times before for things that weren't that important. So that now, today, you're like, I know how to handle this. Look, I understand things that I'm just like, I dread doing. And sometimes, right now, people are like, I dread kind of having this interaction and not knowing how to interact with it well. And not like this fog of like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what to ask and how to ask it. I know it's, Jarvie said, don't just treat it like Google, but that's how I interact to get information online. Everything seems like I ask my questions in these ways and I get the answers in these ways, and now it's different and I don't understand it. I get that. I mean, another example is I hate paperwork, almost of any kind. And for photography, I would hate doing invoices. And it's that experience. I know it doesn't take long, And I know that there's software that makes it easy. And it just, for some reason, the experience was never, it just was not what I enjoyed. And some people can do it so easily without really breaking a sweat. And for me, I'm just like, I hate this. And I'm so familiar now in the experience of interacting with like ChatGPT and other things, or now Grok is another really good one. So I used Grok, for example, yesterday, and I was like, okay, here's the bid I had to do for this client, and here's an invoice that I did 3 years ago. I looked at my email, and I just copy paste those images, and then I took the email, like a line from the email where he said, please send an invoice, and it needs to have this, this, and this, and I just dumped it in there, and I said something to the effect of, and this is how I would write it, looks like I need an invoice for them, and here's some information, and can you create me like an HTML, or like an image, like make an invoice for me, and I'm going to screenshot it and send it to them back in the email. So it's like, you would never say that sort of thing in Google, like, give me the information, this is what I'm going to do with the information. Like, what did Google care what you were going to do with the information? But when you're looking at it more like, almost like an assistant, like, do these things for me, and this is what I'm going to do with it. They're like, I have more context. I understand what the end result needs to look like and be like, because I know what they're going to do with it. Like, even those little insights, like, this is what I'm going to do with your information that you give to me. This is the next step. I'm asking you to do this thing, and the next step after that is going to look like this, but do this first. And they're like, okay, let me prep for the next step in this step. Like, those sorts of things now become a part of the communication. Like, we when you're talking to people sometimes, and you just wish, like, why, I wish I knew what was a little bit more in their mind. Why are they saying what they're saying? We think that sometimes about different people, like, what is it that they're trying to get to? Like, why are they saying what they're saying? Like, I wish I knew the motivation and understood. And now you can practice having those sorts of conversations where you're like, this is why I'm asking what I'm asking. I'm not just asking a thing, but like, this is why it's important to me, and this is what I'm thinking. And also, you can just say, like, look, I'm a newbie in this realm. I could have just said, I hate doing invoices. I would like you to help do it and simplify this process, and I want it to be easier. Then this is literally what I remember now. I said, I don't want to go to a website and insert this somewhere, and I don't want to, I've gone to PayPal in the past and had to do an invoice. I want you to help me something simpler. I don't want to create an account on some site. What can you, do? And it's like, oh, we can do this. All right, well, just talking my language. And the experience wasn't necessarily faster, but I felt like I was so much more involved and empowered, and I was like, okay, I may not like making invoices, but I know that I don't like this and this, and I've made invoices in the past, and I'd like you to change this and this, and it's like, okay, and I'm like, well, I liked that experience, and I can see that my phone is like halty. Is it halty? So the quality of this video may be reduced, and I should probably end it. But I just hope that this helps you look at it a little bit differently. And I could go on and on about this, especially if you have a specific scenario. I could say, I don't have the perfect I mean, we could go through and try to find this perfect prompt. But let's think about this a little bit differently. Let's change the mindset, not just for this problem, but change it so that you can answer all the problems in the future. You can teach a man to fish. You give him a fish that feeds him for that problem. You can teach him how to fish, and they're like, okay, now I know what to do in these situations because Jarvis told me how to solve these certain types of problems. That's cool too. But what if you gave them the foundational ideas so that they can teach themselves, so they can self-improve themselves each time, that their level of thinking is like they now become their own instructor. They use some foundations and they're like, I got this. I don't know the answer to this, and I don't have my teacher present, but I know how to teach, to walk myself through it. And maybe it's asking AI, it's like, hey, here's what I know, and here's what I don't know, and I'm guessing there's some things I don't know that I don't know. Lay it out for me. What do you got? You know, like, I mean, literally I would say those words. Lay it out for me. What do you got? And it's such a different experience. Like, you would never have like said that to Google. Like, that is not a Google way of, like, that's not the past 2 decades of interacting with your computer. Like, lay it out for me. What do you got? Like, and yet it's such a perfectly fine thing to do in AI. Lay it out for me. What do you got? Like, tell me what I don't know. And this back and forth, instead of like, I have one thing that I can ask and I'm going to get this response and we're done. No, like, that is not the experience with AI. Creativity, curiosity, communication. Like, you need to think about it as you need to put in data as well. Like, give it information, whether it's even just like putting in a 30-page manual and saying, look, here's what I know, here's what I don't know, here's a 30-page manual. Don't get too caught up in it. And I'm just adding this to see if there's any insights into this larger conversation. This conversation isn't the 30-page manual, but can we glean anything from it? Literally the words I would say, like that nuance of like, literally what I would say was what I just did say. I would talking voice to text is going to be so much more helpful for a lot of people to do when interacting with AI, and start talking to it like it's your assistant or brainstorming, or it's like yourself. And then when you get the answer, we're so used to like internalizing the answer and going, okay. Externalize it. Talk it out loud. Say what you understood from it. Like, okay, this is what I understood, this, and this is what I think. Bring yourself into it. It's not like you can't, like, no, these are the answers that it gave. Say what you think. Like, bring yourself to the table and say, okay, this is what I understand. And maybe it'll yes man you and like, oh, that's a great way of thinking through it and blah, blah, blah. You could also say, like, challenge me on it. You know, like, what are some pros and cons of what I just said? And you don't have to take it as Bible. It's not scripture. It's not like it can't help you think about it in some other way. It's not like it's giving you the truth and nothing but the truth. And like, and if you don't agree with it, then you gotta part ways. It's like, no, here's what I think. And it's like, oh, okay. It's just such a different experience. And I know that this is not the way that we've been programmed for the last 20 years of interacting with technology, but you gotta have to, like, play. Go and play. Playing is important. You need to play. Try things out. When it's not important, ask questions you already know the answers to, or know parts of the answers, and you are curious, and you say, look, I know this, and I know this, and this is what I know. Why, people are like, why would I tell it? I'm supposed to be finding new information. But yes, but you've got something to add, bring to the table, some things that you can share. So tell it, and then you're on kind of like the same playing field, and you can start from there, and start adding in this brand new world of conversation on that subject. And I don't know, there's so many like fun, creative ways to interact. Don't interact like you would with Google. There's so much more potential there. And then from time to time, do your Google thing, like what's the weather in such and such place today, like, or what's the answer to this, and you can do that from time to time. But if you aren't like being creative and curious and like having this conversation, brainstorming with it, then you're losing out on some of the potential, a lot of it. And that's my thoughts. Bye.